Hi, everyone. I'm Leslyn Keith. I'm a certified lymphedema therapist, and I use nutrition in my practice. As you know from my other videos, I promote a ketogenic diet. And today I'd like to tell you about my book, my newest book that just came out this September of 2021, The Lymphatic Code. This book really unlocks the mysteries of the lymphatic system. So I like to share with you some information from this book. First, I'd like to thank a couple of supporters. One is Compression Guru, and they provide my print version of the book. I'll give you more information about how to get that from Compression Guru, and also Lymphedema Project and the Lymphedema Simplified have also been very supportive of my book. A big thank you to both of those organizations, or all those organizations. So I wanted just to tell you a little bit about my first book that came out in 2019, The Ketogenic Solution for Lymphatic Disorders. And this book was really meant to be a book for the lymphatic professional who wanted to put nutrition into their practice to augment whatever they were doing with their patients with lymphatic and fat disorders. And really, it was designed to be a companion to my 12-week group program for people with lymphatic disorders and weight issues, the Lymphatic Lifestyle Solutions program. It helped to explain why we were integrating nutrition into an overall lifestyle program. And that book is available as both a PDF download from my website at leslynkeith.com, but you can also get the print version of this book from compressionguru.com. But interestingly, even though this book was directed towards the healthcare professional, it was mostly read by the person who had either a lymphatic or a fat disorder. And so that's what spurred me on to do my next book, which this is really directed towards the layperson, the person who has a lymphatic or fat disorder or knows someone who does, and wanted to understand about the impact of lymphatics on health and disease, and also how they can use nutrition to help augment their care. And so I really talk about all the things about how to keep your lymphatic system healthy, which I think is going to be good for anybody, but especially with someone who has a lymphatic or fat disorder. And this book is also available through my website, leslynkeith.com, as a PDF download. So it's essentially an ebook, but you also can get it through the Compression Guru, again, as a print version. And that was starting on September 28th of 2021. That's when that became available. So I wanted just to share with you some more information about what you will find in this book, and maybe you will want to read it. And so I really use the theme of Sherlock Holmes throughout the book, and I have different sayings from different Sherlock Holmes books to exemplify what I'm talking about. And so when we look at the first chapter, which is deciphering the lymphatic code, I use this quote: "When you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth." And so what we're finding out is that we've believed improbable that the lymphatic system was so important. Now we know that that is something that's very, very important to our health. And so in that first book, to begin at the beginning, according to Sherlock Holmes, I first look at the evolutionary development of the lymphatic system and how we lost our lymph hearts, because we used to have little hearts that help pump our lymphatic system along, and now we don't. And I also look at the embryonic development in the womb, how that your lymphatic system develops before you're born, and the two opposing theories of how that came about. I have this picture here of Dr. Florence Sabin. She was at the turn of the last century studying the lymphatic system and was one of the pioneers in helping us discover information about lymphatics. And then in chapter 2, we go on to, I want to make the understanding of the anatomy of the lymphatic system Interesting, but also simple. And so the quote here is Pshaw, my dear boy, it was simplicity itself. So trying to make this, that anatomy, nothing to fear and make it very understandable. And the way that I use to describe it is, you can see this red line on the lymphatic system starting at the foot and traveling all the way up the length of the body. And that's essentially we're following a droplet of water as it enters the lymphatic system at the foot and all the lymphatic structures that it goes through on its way to finally being deposited into the blood just below the collarbone. And so in this way, we can look at all the various anatomical structures on the way. And then in chapter 3, we look at all those various lymphatic and fat disorders. And you see pictured here just some post-surgical edema, some lymphedema secondary to cancer treatment, and lipedema. And so just like Sherlock Holmes said to Watson, let's just have the facts. So giving you the facts about different lymphatic and fat disorders. And then in chapter 4, we're looking at really that such important role that the lymphatic system has in health and disease. So, and according to Sherlock Holmes, there are many problems of disease, many strange pathological possibilities. According to Dr. Stanley Roxon, a lymphatic researcher and actually cardiologist at Stanford University in California, he has said that every organ and system in the body requires healthy lymphatics to function properly. And so in chapter 4, we look at all those. And I look at cardiovascular disease, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, cancer, GI diseases, like you can see pictured here in the lower right. And we're looking at what happens on the inside of the intestines, especially with celiac disease, autoimmune diseases, obesity, respiratory diseases, and neurodegenerative diseases. Because a lot of people don't have just a lymphatic or a fat disorder, they have other conditions as well. And so I wanted to look at how is the ways that the lymphatics impact, help, or hinder. How do healthy lymphatics impact these various systems and organs? And then chapter 5, now we're getting down to nutritional evidence and comparing those diets and what is the impact of these various diets on the lymphatic system and its functioning and its health. And I can look at a spectrum of diets going from vegan all the way to a completely animal source diet of carnivore, and what are the impacts of all those various diets on the way. There is many, many different ways of eating, and I just look at 7 different, very, very common diets. And then in chapter 6, we're looking at the basics of a ketogenic diet and hopefully making that easy for you to understand. And with the help of your healthcare provider, you can adopt it and be able to realize some benefits. And so when I'm looking at that proper healthy human diet of a ketogenic diet, what are the basics? Talking about carbohydrate restriction, eat enough protein, and eat fat to satiation. And we're looking at each of those in detail, so it makes it easy for you to understand and implement. As well as I look at just some basic ketogenic diet takeaways. So, and I just listed a couple here. So eat real food and explaining that. Eat when you're hungry and stop when you're full. And we discussed that a little bit. Stay away from artificial sweeteners and various other things that can help you implement this way of eating. And then in chapter 7, we're going to look at various special issues with dietary change, because there can be some issues no matter which diet you're changing to and from. But there are some unique things and some questions that you may have when you're adopting a ketogenic way of eating. And so again, I just listed a couple of things that I discussed in chapter 7, but issues with electrolytes. This is a very common thing that can happen when you first adopt a ketogenic diet. And I think I have another video talking about this, that sometimes electrolyte imbalance is called the keto flu, but I talk about what to do about that, how to recognize it. If social eating, so sometimes there's issues with eating a different way than everybody else. What do you do if you have gallstones and you want to eat this way? How about if you've had weight loss surgery and you want to eat this way? So all those various things, and again, I didn't list all of them on this slide, but we have questions you might have, and hopefully this chapter will be able to answer those questions for you. And then chapter 8, I get down to all the various most important lifestyle practices that are going to have the most important impact on your lymphatic system, keeping your lymphatic system healthy and having a really good impact on managing your lymphatic or fat disorder. And so the issues that I go over in this chapter are nutrition, physical activity and exercise, breathing, sleep, stress management, sunlight, and social connections. So I think you'll like how this kind of brings everything together in that final chapter. But then I have a bunch of resources for you. We get to the appendices, and this is where I want you to have that support and also that hope. I have this quote from Sherlock Holmes, and meanwhile, take my assurance that the clouds are lifting and that I have every hope that the light of truth is breaking through, because this is what you have the information that you need, but now you need to have that support. And so one of the first things I have in the appendices is here's your shopping list. Really basic, and this is when you go to the grocery store, these are the things you're going to get and the things that you like off of this list. And then I have a glossary of terms, because even though I try to make this to the layperson, there are terms that are unique to this way of eating and unique to understanding the lymphatic system that are not going to be familiar terms to you. So I do have a glossary in there. I talk about, a whole bunch of different resources online and in person, and keto on a budget, because sometimes people are worried that it's going to be an expensive way of eating. So a lot of different resources in here. And then I will tell you also, one of my favorite parts of the book is the personal journeys of people who have a lymphatic or fat disorder, and they've shared their story. This is just 3 of the people that have consented to have their story be part of this book. And interspersed throughout the book, I have pieces of their journey to accentuate or to give an example of a point that I'm making. But when you see that during the book, you're getting just a taste of what their journey was. So don't worry, at the very end, in the appendices, you have their entire story. And so they just in a couple pages kind of talked about what is their entire story with their lymphatic or fat disorder and how using a ketogenic diet has helped them. So I hope that this has been helpful to you to understand more about the book, The Lymphatic Code. And again, you can get that from my website, leslynkeith.com. And you also can get the print version if you prefer not to just have it as an ebook. The print version is available at compressionguru.com. Thank you so much.